Hey there, traveler. Tonight, we're stepping aboard one of the most famous ships in history, the RMS Titanic. But not the disaster story you already know. Not the icy ending, the panic, or the myths that have haunted it for more than a century. No. Tonight, under the soft flicker of candlelight, we're drifting into a gentler, quieter version of that story, the one that unfolded before everything went wrong. The days when Titanic was still a floating palace, and for her first-class passengers, life felt like a dream set to never end. So, dim the lights if you can. Maybe light a candle, or turn on a fan. Let the hum of the world fade into the background. We're about to set sail not for tragedy, but for the calm elegance of 1912 luxury. The kind that was built to lull you, not shock you. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Adjust your pillow, pull up your blanket, and let your shoulders drop from your ears. You might even close your eyes if you'd like. The story will still find you. Now, I have to ask, where are you listening from tonight? Are you tucked into a quiet room somewhere, lights low and the glow of your phone beside you? Maybe it's 3 a.m. in London, and you can almost hear the distant hum of the city beyond your window. Or perhaps you're driving home late in Seattle, and the rhythm of the tires on the road is keeping time with my voice. Wherever you are, this is your cue to pause, to let go of the day, and drift with me into another world, one of silk gowns, crystal chandeliers, and the faint echo of a ship's whistle over calm Atlantic waters. If you're new here, welcome aboard Candlelit History, where we wander softly through the past, one slow breath at a time. And if you've been sailing with us for a while, thank you for returning. I love knowing these stories find you across oceans and time zones. And just a gentle reminder, if these journeys help you unwind, or if history feels a little gentler told like this, you can subscribe. Only if you enjoy it, of course. We'll be here every week, exploring another forgotten corner of time together. Now then, tonight's passage begins on the morning of April 10th, 1912. You wake beneath tall windows in a London hotel room, sunlight spilling through lace curtains, painting golden shapes on the floor. Your hands sink into the softness of Egyptian cotton sheets, the kind that smell faintly of lavender starch. There's a moment, just a breath, before memory catches up to you. And then it hits. Today's the day. The Titanic sails, the largest, grandest, most luxurious ship the world has ever seen, and you have a first-class ticket. Somewhere beyond the window, the city stirs awake. The distant clip of horse hooves on cobblestone, a newspaper boy calling headlines on the corner, the whistle of a train leaving Paddington. All the sounds of London at the edge of a new century, still half in the past and half in the modern age. You rise, stretching into the quiet excitement of the moment. The maid enters with a gentle knock. 7 o'clock, madam, and a silver tray bearing toast and tea. The scent of Earl Grey fills the room. She reminds you, ever so politely, that the boat train to Southampton departs soon, and already your heart beats faster. But we'll get to that part in a moment. First, linger here, because this is what makes history feel alive. That small, intimate moment before a great adventure begins. The way the air feels charged with anticipation. The way your reflection in the mirror looks a little more awake, a little more certain that something extraordinary is about to happen. You take a sip of tea, glance at your luggage piled near the door, and wonder for the 5th time whether you've packed enough. Of course, you've packed too much: 4 trunks, 2 hat boxes, and a leather vanity case that's already straining at its clasps. But who could travel light when crossing the Atlantic? After all, this isn't just a voyage, it's a statement. A week among the world's elite, in a palace that floats. That's where we're headed tonight. We'll walk the decks lined with teak and brass. We'll explore staterooms where electric heaters hum softly beside carved oak furniture. We'll wander through cafes with wicker chairs and painted trellises, and dining rooms where chandeliers sway gently with the sea. We'll meet the passengers, the fashion designers, the heiresses, the self-made millionaires, and the quietly curious travelers who, like you, couldn't resist being part of something historic. But tonight, we'll do it differently. Slowly, gently, the way a dream unfolds. You see, this isn't a story about the iceberg. It's about before that. About what it meant to be alive on the Titanic when she was still the pride of the world, and everyone aboard believed they were gliding toward a golden future. Every detail of the ship tells that story: the polished oak railings, the ivory white panels, the hum of the engines below decks that sounded like a heartbeat. Even the smallest things, the linen folded perfectly at breakfast, the faint perfume of sea air drifting through open portholes, spoke of a time when technology and elegance seemed perfectly in tune. So, as you listen tonight, let the imagery take over. Let the modern world fade out. You're not in 2025 anymore. You're back in 1912, buttoning a navy traveling suit, adjusting your gloves, and glancing out the window at the pale spring sky. In a few hours, you'll be standing at the edge of the Southampton docks, looking up at the gleaming black hull that stretches nearly 900 feet long, so vast it seems to block out the sky. You'll hear the chatter of porters, the shuffle of luggage, the faint strains of a band playing somewhere in the distance. The air will smell of salt, coal smoke, and adventure. But before that journey begins, take another deep breath. You're safe here. The past isn't rushing, it's waiting. You can drift at your own pace through these candlelit corridors of history. That's the beauty of nights like this. So, as the music fades in and the soft crackle of candlelight takes over the background, imagine yourself standing at the threshold of a new century, a world of silk and silver, of laughter and layered etiquette, of ocean breezes and electric light. The greatest ship ever built awaits you, gleaming beneath the April sun. Her name, Titanic, already feels immortal, though no one aboard could possibly know why. And when you're ready, we'll step aboard together. You'll feel the subtle sway beneath your feet, hear the murmur of conversation, and catch the scent of freshly polished brass. This is where our story begins, not with disaster, but with wonder. With the moment just before history changed forever. So, take a final breath. Let your eyes grow heavy, and listen to the quiet hum of engines beneath the waves. Tonight, we sail gently into the heart of 1912. And for a while, the world will feel perfectly calm. The first thing you notice is the light. It's soft, golden, and utterly English, the kind that slips quietly through the tall windows of your London hotel room and settles across the room like dusted silk. You stir beneath the crisp weight of the covers, momentarily caught between dream and waking, until the faint rumble of carriage wheels below reminds you where you are. And then you remember why. April 10th, 1912, the morning the Titanic sails. There's a knock at the door. 7 o'clock, madam. The familiar voice of your lady's maid, Emily. The handle turns softly, and the scent of warm toast and bergamot drifts into the room as she enters, carrying a silver tray with your tea. Steam curls in the pale morning air. "It's a fine day," she says, setting the tray beside you. "I've asked the porter to have the luggage brought down within the hour. The boat train leaves at 9. You sit up, brushing sleep from your eyes. The room feels like a stage just before the curtain rises, quiet, poised, filled with expectation. Beyond the window, the city hums. Omnibuses rattle past. A newsboy's shout echoes faintly from the street below, something about the Titanic's maiden voyage, though you can't quite catch the words. Even London seems to be talking about her. Emily moves with the efficiency of someone who's done this 100 times before. She lays out your traveling suit on the armchair, navy wool with a crisp white blouse, silver buttons polished to a soft gleam. Beside it rests your hat, wide-brimmed, perfectly matched, the feather curling like a question mark toward the ceiling. "Shall I pack the lavender sachets with your evening dresses, madam?" she asks. "Yes, all of them," you reply, stifling a yawn. "I suspect even the sea air can't compete with White Star linen." She smiles faintly but doesn't comment. The White Star Line, after all, has promised a voyage unlike any other luxury beyond comprehension. every comfort known to modern civilization. It's hard not to believe it. Every newspaper in London has printed glowing accounts of the Titanic's interiors, the Turkish baths, the grand staircase, the gymnasium with electric horses and camels, the smoking rooms panelled in mahogany, and a dining saloon large enough to hold a small army. But for now, your world is still the quiet domestic rhythm of morning, the hiss of the kettle, the delicate chime of teaspoons against china. You sip your tea Earl Grey, strong but smooth, and savor the last few moments of stillness before the day begins in earnest. Your luggage, a mountain of it, stands ready by the door. 4 great steamer trunks, 2 smaller cases, 3 hat boxes, and a small leather vanity that holds your jewelry and scent bottles. Each piece bears the same neat tag: RMS Titanic, B deck, stateroom 64. The sight makes you both proud and faintly embarrassed. A week at sea, and it looks as though you're moving an entire household. You're certain everything is packed. You ask, though you've already asked twice. Everything except your morning things, madam, Emily replies, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from your gloves. I've even had your calling cards refreshed. They'll be needed, no doubt. You smile at that. First-class life demands an unspoken ritual: introductions, dinners, appearances. A dance of manners as precise as any waltz. But that, you remind yourself, is part of the allure. This isn't just travel. It's theatre. You rise from bed, and Emily begins the practiced process of dressing you. The garments come layer by layer: a silk camise, drawers, the corset pulled tight, but not too tight for travelling, the petticoats, the stockings. Then comes the walking suit, heavy enough for the chill April air, cut perfectly to your figure. When she pins your hat in place and steps back, you barely recognize the woman in the mirror. Composed, elegant, ready for the Atlantic. Downstairs, the hotel lobby hums with quiet luxury. A few other travellers are departing for Southampton: men in tailored coats, women in veiled hats, porters moving briskly with luggage carts. The doorman tips his cap as you step outside. Your automobile is waiting, madam. The motorcar gleams like a promise under the soft grey sky. You climb in, and as the vehicle pulls away from the curb, London unfolds around you in its early morning calm. The shopkeepers rolling up shutters, the scent of fresh bread drifting from a bakery, policemen standing at corners with brass buttons shining, and somewhere in the distance, a clock chimes 8. Imagine it, you murmur, half to yourself. A ship so vast it has its own gymnasium, electricity in every cabin, and a swimming bath below deck. Emily smiles from the seat beside you. They say it's unsinkable, madam. You laugh softly. So, they say. Though I rather think the sea doesn't read newspapers. The road to Waterloo Station winds through the city's heart, past the Thames glimmering faintly under a low mist. When the car finally stops at the platform, the scene that greets you is a flurry of excitement. Porters whistle, luggage is stacked in great towers, and elegant passengers crowd the platforms in anticipation. The air is thick with chatter and, faintly, the scent of coal smoke drifting from the engines. A sign above the platform reads, "Boat Train, Southampton Docks." Beneath it, men in uniforms check tickets and direct passengers toward the correct compartments. The entire operation hums with precision, the way only Edwardian travel could. Inside the first-class carriage, the air smells faintly of leather and fresh varnish. The seats are plush, upholstered in deep red velvet. You settle beside a window, Emily seated discreetly nearby. Across from you, a pair of middle-aged gentlemen in top-to hats discuss the ship's specifications, her length, her weight, her safety features, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for cathedrals. "I read she's nearly 900 feet long," one says. "Twice the size of the Lusitania." "Indeed. A city unto herself," replies the other, consulting his pocket watch. "If that's the future of ocean travel, we've reached perfection." Their conversation fades into the rhythmic clatter of wheels as the train begins to move. London slips past the window row houses, narrow lanes, the occasional puff of steam from another passing train. The city gives way to countryside, rolling fields, distant cottages, and the soft haze of spring mist rising over hedgerows. The journey to Southampton takes less than 2 hours, but each minute feels weighted with anticipation. The passengers grow restless, glancing at their watches, folding and refolding newspapers. Someone begins to hum a waltz. You can almost feel the collective heartbeat of excitement building inside the carriage. Then, suddenly, a ripple moves through the compartment. There she is, a young woman exclaims, pointing toward the horizon. You lean closer to the window. And there beyond the rooftops of the port city, past the cranes and the chimneys, you see it. 4 enormous funnels rising into the sky, black and buff against the pale clouds. The sheer scale of the ship takes your breath away. Even from a distance, she looks too large to belong to the world of water. As the train pulls into the dockside station, the platform bursts into motion. Luggage is unloaded, porters shout instructions, photographers snap pictures. The air smells of coal, smoke and salt, and beneath it all, something electric, a sense of collective awe. The Titanic looms above everything, her name gleaming in gold letters across the bow. You step down onto the platform, and for a long moment, you just stand there, gazing upward. The ship's hull rises so high that you have to tilt your head back until your hat nearly slips. Around you, voices murmur, magnificent, colossal, extraordinary. And all you can think is that no painting or newspaper sketch ever came close to this. Emily touches your arm gently. "Shall we, madam?" You nod, but your eyes remain fixed on the gangway ahead, the path that leads upward, toward the glittering decks, the polished brass, the life that waits beyond that doorway. The gangway sways slightly with the tide, creaking softly under the weight of passengers ascending before you. You take a deep breath. The air tastes faintly of sea salt and possibility. Then you step forward, your gloved hand on the railing. And just as your foot touches the gangway, a distant horn sounds low, deep, and resonant, vibrating in your chest like a heartbeat. The ship is alive. You glance back one last time at the world you're leaving behind, the grey English sky, the crowd waving handkerchiefs, the city that already feels miles away. Then you face forward again, heart thrumming in your chest, and climb toward the deck of the greatest ship ever built. What you don't know, what none of you can know, is that somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, something waits, something cold. But for now, all you can feel is wonder. And the adventure has only just begun. The gangway creaks softly beneath your boots as you ascend, the faint sway reminding you that you're crossing from the world of stone and certainty into one of steel and water. The smell of the dock's coal smoke, oil, salt clings to the air, and for a heartbeat, you hesitate at the threshold. Below, the harbour teems with movement. Porters rushing with luggage carts, vendors hawking souvenirs, journalists scribbling hurried notes. The sound of the crowd rises and falls like the sea itself, blending with the rhythmic hiss of steam escaping from the ship's funnels. Then, as your gloved hand tightens on the brass railing, you take the final step. The deck planks feel solid beneath you, warm from the morning sun, and just like that, you're no longer on land. You're aboard the Titanic. A steward in a pristine white jacket greets you with a practiced smile. "Welcome aboard, madam. First-class passengers to the left, if you please." His voice is calm but quick. He's repeated these words dozens of times already today. Behind him, a second steward checks tickets, glancing at the embossed lettering that marks you as one of the elite. First class B deck. He nods approvingly, marking your passage on his list, and gestures toward the entrance, reserved exclusively for the upper decks. You pause for a moment at the base of the gangway to look back one last time. The crowd on the dock has thinned now, waving handkerchiefs fluttering like white petals in the breeze. Steam curls from the funnels, and the low moan of the ship's horn rolls across the water again, so deep it seems to vibrate inside your ribs. Somewhere behind you, a woman's voice trembles with excitement. "She's unsinkable," they say. Someone else laughs. "A hotel that floats, imagine such a thing." The steward opens the door, and you step inside. The transformation is instant. One moment you're surrounded by the chaos of the docks, and the next you're standing in what feels like a country estate. The gangway gives way to a hallway lined with polished oak and gilt fixtures. The air smells faintly of beeswax and lavender polish. Thick carpets swallow your footsteps, and a hush seems to fall around you. If it weren't for the subtle sway beneath your feet, you could almost believe you'd stepped into a fine London hotel rather than a ship at sea. "This way, madam," says another steward, appearing as if conjured. "We'll have your luggage sent along directly. Purser's office is just ahead, should you wish to make arrangements for the voyage." His tone is brisk but polite, the way of a man who knows precisely where everyone should be at every moment. You follow him, your eyes darting from one gleaming surface to another. Brass light fixtures shaped like lilies. A delicate plaster ceiling patterned with gold rosettes. Even the doorknobs gleam like jewels. The purser's office sits just off the main companionway, a small but elegant room where passengers handle their practical affairs. Inside, a queue has already formed, gentlemen in tailored coats depositing cash and valuables into the ship's safe, ladies booking deck chairs or asking about dinner seating. The room hums with quiet activity. You step into line behind a tall man in a grey morning coat who's engaged in an increasingly animated discussion with a steward. "I'm telling you," the man says, his voice low but indignant, "this cabin cannot be correct. It's positively tiny, no larger than a broom closet." The steward maintains a professional smile. "I assure you, sir, all first-class cabins meet the White Star standard." The man sighs dramatically, muttering something about being misled by the brochures. You hide a smile behind your gloved hand. Perhaps the advertisements were a touch grandiose. "Your cabin, madam?" the purser asks when your turn arrives. You hand over your ticket, and he nods approvingly. "B64. Very fine choice." He makes a note in his ledger, then gestures to the steward who will escort you. The corridor beyond twists and turns like a maze. Even with the steady roll of your guide's confident stride, it's easy to lose your bearings. The walls are panelled in rich wood, the floor carpeted so deeply that it muffles all sound. Every few feet, electric sconces cast a warm golden glow, soft, flattering, almost dreamlike. The faint vibration of the engines beneath your feet feels like a heartbeat, constant and reassuring. You pass other passengers along the way. A woman in furs complaining about the prow, chill. A young man laughing with his valet. A little girl clutching a doll and gazing in wonder at the ornate corridor. "Here we are, madam," the steward announces at last, stopping before a polished brass door. "Your stateroom." He unlocks it with a small flourish and steps aside. You step in, and your breath catches. The room is exquisite. Carved white moldings frame pale silk wallpaper, the kind that shimmers faintly in the light. A marble-topped washstand stands against one wall beside a gilt-framed mirror. The bed, draped in crisp linen, looks as though it belongs in a Mayfair townhouse, not the middle of the ocean. A small writing desk sits beneath the porthole, where sunlight pools in a circle of gold. Even the air feels touched by refinement. Lavender sachets tucked discreetly among the linens. A faint hum of electricity warming the space. "Would you care for assistance unpacking?" the steward asks. "My maid will see to it," you reply, though you can't resist opening one of the trunks yourself, just to reassure your senses that all of this is real. You've never seen a ship like this, no one has. A knock at the door interrupts you. It's your friend from the train, cheeks flushed with excitement. "You must come up to the boat deck," she insists. "They're about to cast off." You hesitate only for a moment, curiosity winning over comfort. "Very well, lead the way." The two of you hurry through the corridors, following the growing sound of voices and movement. Then, as you step into the grand staircase foyer, the sight before you makes you stop dead. It's magnificent, a sweeping double staircase of carved oak rising through several decks, crowned by a glass dome that spills sunlight in long golden beams. At the center, a clock gleams above a wrought iron railing, its face framed by two carved figures, honor and glory crowning time. Imagine descending those steps in an evening gown. Your friend whispers, her voice reverent. You don't answer, you can only stare. The staircase alone would be enough to make headlines, yet here it is, merely a passageway aboard this floating world. The sound of the whistle cuts through the air again, 3 deep blasts that reverberate through the entire ship. You feel them in your bones. The air shifts, conversation halts. Then, as if on cue, the passengers surge upward toward the deck. The April air hits your face, cool and fresh with a hint of coal smoke. The deck stretches endlessly, in both directions, a vast promenade of gleaming teak. Crowds line the railings, men lifting their hats, women waving handkerchiefs, children perched on tiptoe. The harbour below is a blur of movement. Tugboats churning foam, sailors shouting orders, the water rippling in Titanic's growing wake. You find your place at the rail, heart pounding. Look, your friend cries. She's moving. It's true. Beneath your feet, the ship gives a subtle lurch, almost imperceptible, and the dock begins to slip away. Slowly, gracefully, the Titanic glides forward, her engines thrumming deep below. People on shore wave and cheer, their voices carried on the wind. Some run alongside the ship until the distance widens too much. Handkerchiefs flutter like snow. For a moment, you think you catch sight of another vessel drifting strangely close, the SS New York, tugboat scrambling to rein her in before she brushes against Titanic's hull. Gasps ripple through the crowd, but the smaller ship is pulled away just in time. A nervous laugh escapes someone nearby. An omen, they joke lightly. You glance back at the horizon. The sky is clear, pale blue, stretching as far as you can see. The world feels full of promise. Beneath the sunlight, the great ship hums with energy, alive and unstoppable. You stay at the railing long after the port fades from view, watching England shrink to a grey smudge against the horizon. Somewhere behind you, the orchestra begins to play on the promenade deck, soft, cheerful, full of confidence. The notes drift through the air like a lullaby for giants. Your friend sighs contentedly. We're really doing it, she says. We're crossing the Atlantic on the Titanic. You smile, the wind tugging at your hat. Yes, you reply softly. And the world will never be the same again. You don't yet know how right you are. The deck beneath your feet thrums with life, steady, powerful, assured. The vibration of the engines isn't harsh or intrusive. It's almost comforting, like the heartbeat of some colossal creature that means you no harm. As you stand at the rail, the port of Southampton slowly recedes into a watercolor blur. The faint cries of dock workers, the last fluttering handkerchiefs, the puffing tugboats, they all melt away until there is only water, endless and gleaming, and the towering presence of the ship herself. Your friend laughs softly beside you, tucking a stray curl beneath her hat. I still can't believe it, she says. To think we're really aboard the Titanic. It's like being part of history. You nod, though words feel too small for the moment. Everything, the wind, the smell of salt and coal, the faint echo of the band playing somewhere above feels larger than life. You glance back at the 4 funnels rising high into the sky, painted buff and black, and try to grasp the scale of what surrounds you. The Titanic doesn't simply float, she dominates the horizon. But there's more to see. The ship is far too vast to take in from the deck alone. You follow your friend toward the entrance of the grand staircase, where polished oak doors gleam like mirrors. A steward bows slightly as you pass, holding the door open. Mind your step, madam. You thank him, though your voice comes out softer than you intended. Inside, the transition from open air to enclosed luxury is so sudden it almost feels like stepping through time. The scent of fresh varnish and perfume fills the corridor. Electric lights glow in ornate fixtures shaped like lilies, and the air carries a faint hum of machinery beneath the silence, a reminder that this world runs on both elegance and power. The grand staircase rises before you again, more breathtaking now that the crowd has thinned. Afternoon sunlight pours through the glass dome above, filtering down in golden streams that glint off the polished balustrades. A young couple poses for a photograph at the base of the stairs, while a steward fusses over their posture, urging them to smile. You catch your reflection in the glass of a nearby display case. A fleeting image of someone transported, wide-eyed, caught between wonder and disbelief. A voice breaks through your reverie. First time crossing. You turn to find a gentleman in his 50s, neatly dressed in a dark grey suit with a gold watch chain glinting across his waistcoat. His manner is polite, curious, the kind of classer, practiced ease that comes from years of social grace. Yes, you reply. And you? Not my first, he says with a smile. I sailed on the Olympic last year. Titanic's sister ship. She was splendid, but this, his gaze sweeps the staircase. This is something else entirely. White Star has truly outdone themselves. Before you can answer, your friend tugs at your sleeve, eyes sparkling. Come on, she whispers. Let's see what else there is. They say there's a lounge like a palace and a Parisian cafe somewhere on this deck. You follow her through a maze of corridors, each one revealing new wonders. The first-class lounge, when you find it, feels like something lifted from Versailles, white and gold paneling, crystal chandeliers, and delicate furniture arranged in intimate groups for conversation. The soft murmur of voices and the faint clink of teacups fill the air. The carpet underfoot is so thick, it silences every footstep. This is where the ladies gather after dinner. Your friend whispers, peering around, while the gentlemen retire to the smoking room. The smoking room, you discover, is equally grand in its own right, a sanctuary of deep mahogany, stained glass windows, and green leather chairs. A steward polishes one of the brass railings, while another arranges cigars in a glass case. A few early occupants lounge in the corner, puffing on pipes and discussing politics with the slow confidence of men who have nowhere urgent to be. Times are changing, your friend murmurs with amusement. Do you suppose they'd let us in after dinner? Perhaps if we disguise ourselves as gentlemen, you reply, and both of you stifle a laugh. The next room takes you entirely by surprise. The Café Parisien glows with light and warmth, a whimsical imitation of a sidewalk cafe in springtime Paris. The walls are lined with trellises and climbing ivy, the wicker chairs arranged around small marble tables. Even the floor has been designed to resemble cobblestones. Passengers sit beneath faux pergolas sipping tea and nibbling on pastries, as though the English Channel outside were 1,000 miles away. A steward greets you with a polite nod. Would you care for tea, ladies? Not yet, you reply. We're exploring. Of course, he says, smiling. But do come back tomorrow morning. The light here is quite beautiful at sunrise. You move on, feeling as though you've wandered into a dream stitched together from every glamorous corner of the world. Each room flows seamlessly into the next, the reading and writing room, where ladies quietly pen letters on Titanic stationery, the reception room, where the faint notes of a waltz drift from a hidden gramophone, the barber's shop, gleaming with mirrors and bottles of tonic, even a flower shop, filled with the scent of roses and hyacinth. Everywhere, people are smiling, new acquaintances, shaking hands, old friends reuniting, families admiring the view from the portholes. For a brief moment, you forget entirely that you're on the sea. The Titanic feels more like a small city than a ship, every corridor alive with movement and possibility. By the time you return to your stateroom, the sun has begun its slow descent over the water. Your luggage has arrived, stacked neatly against the wall, and Emily is already unpacking. It's even grander than I imagined, you tell her. She glances up from folding a gown. The servants' quarters are quite fine too, madam, she says. Smaller, of course, but clean and bright. Everyone seems in good spirits. You nod approvingly, though your attention drifts toward the porthole. Outside, the horizon glows in shades of amber and rose. The water catches the light like glass. Somewhere far above, you can hear the faint strains of music, the ship's band beginning their evening set on the promenade deck. Will you be dressing for dinner, madam? Emily asks. Not the full gown tonight, you reply. Something simpler. We'll save the jewels for tomorrow. Very good. As she moves efficiently about the room, laying out your evening dress, You find yourself watching the sea through the round window. The motion of the ship is almost imperceptible, the ocean a mirror stretching endlessly in every direction. It feels strange, this perfect calm. The kind of stillness that makes you forget how much power churns beneath the surface. By the time you make your way back toward the grand staircase, the corridors are alive with evening energy. Ladies glide past in shimmering gowns of silk and chiffon, their laughter trailing like perfume. Gentlemen in crisp black coats exchange greetings, their voices low and warm. The air hums with anticipation, the promise of fine food and fine company. You pass the orchestra, 5 men in neat uniforms tuning their instruments in a corner alcove. A violinist glances up, catching your eye, and offers a small conspiratorial smile as he tests a few notes of Alexander's ragtime band. It's jaunty, cheerful, modern, the kind of tune that seems to say the world is moving forward, faster and brighter than ever before. And then, as you step through the double doors of the reception room, a steward sounds a small gong. "Dinner is served," he announces, his voice carrying through the air. Around you, conversations pause. The crowd begins to flow toward the entrance of the dining saloon, a tide of silken laughter and the faint rustle of expectation. Your friend appears at your side again, cheeks flushed, eyes alight. "I hear the menu tonight includes roast duckling and sirloin," she says, half whispering. "And the desserts are famous, shall we?" You smile, linking your arm with hers as the orchestra strikes up another tune. The great doors ahead swing open to reveal a room so vast and glittering. It almost steals your breath. A cathedral of white panels, chandeliers, and endless tables set with silver and china. For a moment, you hesitate at the threshold, taking it all in. The hum of voices, the clink of crystal, the faint vibration of the ship beneath your feet. It all feels impossibly alive, impossibly grand. And yet, somewhere deep within that hum, beneath the music and laughter, something else thrums quietly. Not danger exactly, but destiny. A rhythm just out of sync with the rest. You can't name it. Not yet. You take your seat, unaware that as the Titanic sails calmly toward open ocean, this glittering evening will be remembered forever, not for its beauty, but for its beginning. The doors of the dining saloon open wide, and for a heartbeat, you simply stand there, breath caught, senses flooded. The room is enormous. The light, almost blinding after the corridor's warm dimness, spills down from crystal chandeliers and glints off rows of silver cutlery and glassware. It feels less like a ship's dining hall and more like a royal ballroom anchored to the sea. The scent of fresh flowers mingles with that of rich sauces and freshly baked bread. The low murmur of conversation, laughter, and the soft notes of the orchestra weave together into a single living sound. You follow the maitre d' through the maze of tables. Each setting gleams silver forks, aligned with mathematical precision, linen so perfectly pressed it looks starched into stillness. At your table, Maggie Brown, the vivacious American you met earlier, waves you over, her smile broad and conspiratorial. "Here you are," she says. "I've been telling these good people all about your first impressions of the ship." "Nothing unflattering, I hope," you reply, taking your seat. "Only the truth," she says, eyes glinting. "That you look like a woman halfway between fascination and disbelief. Which, to be fair, is how everyone feels right now." The others at your table, a dignified older couple named the Bishops and a younger man traveling alone, introduce themselves with the smooth politeness of people used to drawing social circles at sea. A steward appears instantly to unfold your napkin and pour water into a glass so thin it rings when you touch it. You glance around, taking in the details, the gentle sway of chandeliers as the ship moves through the water, the soft shimmer of jewelry at nearly every table, and the sheer number of waiters gliding between them, each movement practiced and silent. A gong sounds, subtle but firm, and the orchestra shifts from waltz to something slower, more stately. The first course begins its parade. Stewards carry trays stacked with delicate china bowls, filled with consommé Olga, a rich, golden broth flecked with herbs. The scent is intoxicating, both earthy and refined. "To the first night of the greatest ship ever built," says the younger man at your table, raising his glass. The others echo him softly, as if not to break the spell. The courses come one after another, with clockwork grace. Salmon with cucumber garnish, sirloin of beef with chateau potatoes, roast duckling with apple sauce, cold asparagus salad, Waldorf pudding, and finally, fruit and cheeses arranged like art. The ship might be moving at 22 knots through the dark Atlantic, but nothing about this dinner feels hurried. It's a ritual of leisure, an ode to abundance. As you eat, conversation drifts easily between topics. Maggie tells a story about meeting the ship's builder, Thomas Andrews, earlier in the day. He was walking around with a notebook, she says, gesturing with her fork. Checking the railings himself, would you believe it? Said he wanted to make sure every screw was exactly where it should be. Imagine that, designing the largest ship in the world, and still worrying about the screws. Detail makes perfection, says Mr. Bishop with a nod. White Star prides itself on that. Perfection indeed, Maggie agrees. Though I confess I peeked into the kitchen earlier, and it's like a small city down there, dozens of chefs, endless copper pots, and not a moment's rest. I'd wager this entire dinner could feed a regiment. You laugh softly, watching the steward replace your plate as though by magic. It's difficult to imagine we're on the ocean at all, you say. It feels too solid. Ah, but that's the point, Mrs. Bishop murmurs. White Star promised we'd feel no motion, hear no engines, and want for nothing. A hotel that moves without moving. She's right. The ship glides so smoothly you could almost forget you're surrounded by miles of cold water. The only hint of motion is the faint vibration beneath your shoes. A steady rhythm that feels like the pulse of the vessel itself. Dessert arrives, apple meringue pie with vanilla cream, and you find yourself watching the other tables. Faces familiar from newspapers and gossip columns gleam under the electric lights. The Guggenheims, the Duff Gordons, the Astors. The air hums with soft conversation and the occasional tinkling laugh. It's not arrogance you sense here, but something gentler, a shared illusion of safety, of superiority over nature. The Titanic isn't just a ship to them. It's proof that mankind has conquered the sea. A steward appears at your elbow with coffee and liqueur. Will you be retiring to the lounge after dinner, madam? Perhaps, you say. If I can still move after all this. He smiles. There's always the promenade deck for fresh air, should you wish to walk off the Indulgence. By the time the final plates are cleared, the room has shifted from polite formality to an almost festive warmth. The orchestra has begun playing a familiar tune, the Blue Danube, and a few couples sway subtly at their tables in time with the rhythm. Maggie claps softly. They really do think of everything, she says. Even the perfect waltz to digest by. The bishops excuse themselves, and your friend leans close. Let's go up to the boat deck. They say the stars are astonishing this far from shore. You nod eagerly. After hours under the glow of chandeliers, the idea of cool air and darkness feels like a relief. The moment you step outside, the chill bites pleasantly at your cheeks. The air smells of salt and faint coal smoke, but also something else clean, sharp, alive. Above you stretches the sky, vast and unpolluted, scattered with stars so bright they look close enough to touch. The ocean below mirrors them perfectly, black glass flecked with silver. For a long moment, you can't speak. You can only listen to the sound of the ship cutting through water, the low hum of engines deep beneath your feet. Magnificent, Maggie whispers. Imagine crossing an ocean like this every week. I'd never go by land again. You lean against the railing, gazing down at the faint trail of foam glowing white behind the ship. The scarm. Engine's rhythm is hypnotic. The horizon an endless seam of darkness and starlight. Around you, other passengers stroll quietly, murmuring in low tones. The ship seems almost suspended between worlds, neither land nor sea, but something entirely its own. Then, faintly, you feel it, a shudder beneath your feet. So subtle that for a moment you think you've imagined it. The vibration deepens for a heartbeat, then steadies again. Maggie notices your pause. What is it? Nothing, you say quickly. Just the machinery, perhaps. She shrugs, unconcerned. If it's the worst we feel all voyage, we're lucky indeed. You smile, though the sensation lingers. Somewhere below deck, a deep, metallic clang echoes faint, distant, but oddly resonant. It might be nothing more than a closing bulkhead, a shift of gears. Still, it sends a ripple of awareness up your spine. You turn your gaze back to the stars. There are so many of them tonight, uncountable, unwavering. The ship's funnels cast long shadows over the deck, and the faint strains of the orchestra drift upward from somewhere below, a waltz slowed by distance, softened by the sea. Beside you, Maggie sighs contentedly. What a world we live in, she murmurs. A world where man can dine beneath chandeliers and sleep in electric light while sailing through the night itself. You nod, but your eyes stay fixed on the horizon. The air feels colder now, sharper. Somewhere ahead, far beyond the reach of those glittering lights, the Atlantic stretches vast and silent. And though you don't yet know it, that silence is waiting. You wake to a sound that isn't a sound so much as a feeling, the gentle, even thrum that lives in the bones of the ship. In the quiet, just after sleep, it seems to be breathing for you, steady as a metronome. Your eyes open to a pale wash of daylight, seeping around the curtain. The porthole is filmed with the faintest silver of sea spray, like frost painted by an invisible hand. For a moment you don't move. You let the rhythm of the engines draw a slow line through your thoughts, and only then does memory reassemble itself. Not a hotel, not London, but a palace at sea, already far from shore, a soft knock. Good morning, madam. Emily slips in with a tray that glows porcelain white, polished silver, amber tea tilting in its cup as the ship swings almost imperceptibly to the swell. A fine day, she reports, setting the tray beside the bed. Brisk on deck, the steward says, clear as crystal. She lays a single sheet of paper next to your cup with the gravity of a telegram. Atlantic Daily Bulletin. Typed neatly by the wireless men in the night. It lists a dozen small miracles. Mileage made good. An afternoon concert in the lounge. The weather ahead, and the smallest scatter of world news drifting across the static. You skim the figures, there's a cheerfulness to numbers at sea. They make distance feel domesticated. Then pause, on a tiny line near the bottom. Marconi notes, heavy traffic expected today. It means nothing and everything. People are talking across the ocean. Washing at the marble basin, you watch steam curl up from the pitcher like a genie. Hairpins clink into the little dish. Gloves lie open on the chair like sleeping birds. Dressing by degrees soft linen, stockings, the day corset drawn just snug enough for posture, not punishment. You choose the walking suit with the slightly deeper pockets. It's a morning for pockets, for a handkerchief, for a notebook, for a little folding map of a ship, so large that a map feels less like vanity and more like survival. The corridor hums with polite industry. Stewards drift by with trays and messages. A boy in livery pilots the lift with solemn pride. Up to a deck, madam? Madam Prefie. And you allow yourself the novelty of floating between floors in a brass and mirror cage while the ocean glides past outside. When the doors open, light spills in. The air on, the boat deck is crisp enough to sting, and it smells of salt and clean metal and somehow distance. The promenade is already alive. Blanketed deck chairs bloom along the rail in a tidy row, each bearing a numbered tag like a nameplate on a throne. A steward with a ledger asks, "Would you care to reserve one for the week, madam? A steamer rug as well." You choose a spot out of the wind and let him burrito you in wool, amused at the civilized absurdity of being tucked in like a favored infant upon a vessel the size of a cathedral. The sea is the most complicated blue you have ever seen ink at the horizon. Then glass, then sapphire, where the wake turns sunlight into diamonds. Walkers circle the deck with the solemnity of monks, each at a personal pace. Brisk gentlemen, with hands behind backs, ladies 2 by 2, heads tipped together. A child skittering past with a hoop until a nanny materializes like a conjuration and steers him back to decorum. Somewhere above, A boatswain's whistle skims the air, bright, clean, authoritative. Hunger becomes persuasion rather than complaint. In the dining saloon, morning glory replaces last night's glitter. Sunlight lays sharp rectangles across white paneling. The room smells of coffee and warm bread and a hint of smoked fish. Breakfast is a generous democracy. Kippers for the resolute, omelettes for the cheerful, porridge for the virtuous, rolls and marmalade for the hopeful. You choose simply porridge with cream and a slice of grilled tomato, letting the steward's choreography unspool around you. A ballet of quiet hands, fresh cups, the swift ghosting away of a crumb. Conversation is hushed. Voices carry differently by daylight, more intimate, less theatrical. At a neighboring table, a gentleman murmurs about the noon run and the day's pool on mileage, his wife nodding as if he were discussing a favorite hymn. After breakfast, the ship turns into a small town waking for market day. You peek into the barber's bottles glinting like stained glass as a man emerges smelling faintly of bay, rum, and new beginnings. The reading and writing room is a library of morning faces, pens moving over Titanic stationery with Sunday best penmanship. My dear, we are afloat and well. The sea astonishingly calm. Down the corridor, a door stands ajar, and a spark gaps somewhere unseen, sharp, insect bright, the sound of information being born. A glimpse of a blue uniform, a coil of wire, a card tacked to a notice board with times and tariffs, and a neat emphatic line. Cape race after dark. You linger one heartbeat too long, feel the curiosity tug like a sleeve, then move on with the slow tide of passengers. There's time yet for everything. You keep your promise to the deck and walk. Wind needles your cheeks, but the sun is sugar, and the horizon has become a private religion. A gentleman points with his cane, and you follow his gaze dolphins, stitching silver S-curves through the wake. Laughter rises around you soft, delighted, the way people laugh when nature performs on cue. Far forward, two officers measure the sky with sextants like men tuning a violin. At noon exactly, the bell strikes, and it feels as though the whole ship inhales and holds. A ritual you didn't know you were waiting for. The gymnasium proves irrepressibly modern, white-painted, bright, impatient with stillness. You leave dignity by the door and take the rowing machine, feeling absurdly heroic for a minute and quietly mortal by the third. The physical instructor counts time with a metronome's mercy. Excellent, madam. Steady. And rest. Nearby, a lady in an ankle-length divided skirt tests the punching ball with delicate ferocity. A gentleman tries a vibrating belt and looks immediately as though reconsidering all his life choices. You are offered a towel, as if you have conquered something. Perhaps you have. The notion that a body at sea must be entirely idle. By late morning, the Café Parisien has turned to pure theatre sun slanting across trellises, white china glowing like new teeth, the clink of tiny spoons. You take chocolate rather than tea because it feels mildly rebellious, and because the day has that kind of permission written in it. A young American, pink with enthusiasm, declares to no one and everyone that she has wired home from the ocean and expects her father to be both scandalized and impressed. A matron in violet remarks, "One ought not to brag about expense," and then immediately asks how many words it cost. When you step back onto the boat deck, the light has sharpened, a brilliant northerly clarity that turns everything to etching. The wind has edged colder, not cruel, just more official. The orchestra tunes in the lounge. A snatch of melody escapes when the door opens and closes, like a bird that can't decide whether to migrate. A steward handing out the noon-run sweepstakes passes by with a polite cough. Care to enter, madam? Closest guest to today's mileage takes the pot. You write a number smaller than the men are boasting and larger than modesty recommends, and tuck the ticket into that excellent pocket. The paper feels pleasantly conspiratorial against your palm. Another circuit around the deck, and the ship's character deepens, less novelty now, more acquaintance. You notice how the teak planks are corked, how the rail warms where the sun touches it, how the shadow of a funnel cuts the light like a sundial. Two little dogs, their leads in a maid's careful hand, trot past with professional gravitas. A deckhand's laugh floats up from somewhere out of sight. The sea answers in glitter. You are thinking of lunch, of some civilized permutation of soup and quiet, when you pass once more by the passage near the wireless room. The same slight door, the same faint smell of ozone. Only now a young operator steps out for air, sleeves rolled, hair shocked a little by the static. He pins a fresh slip to the small notice board, straightens it with the fastidiousness of a man who likes the world tidy, and vanishes back into the crackle and code. You hadn't meant to stop, you do. The paper is unremarkable, typewritten, succinct, a list of signals received, and the usual tariff notes. Your eye skims, lazy with contentment, and then snags one new line, brief, almost shy of its own importance. Report received. Ice in the lanes ahead. A door farther down opens. A steward calls your name with a courteous, carrying voice. A luncheon note for you, madam. And the corridor turns its face back toward everyday pleasures. But your gaze holds on that single, ordinary word, the ink still fresh enough to glisten. Ice. You turn toward the steward, smile already forming, because lunch is surely lovely. And messages are always nice, and yet the engine's steady heartbeat suddenly feels louder in your ears, as if listening for your reply. By midday, the Titanic feels like its own small empire, steady, elegant, and perfectly certain of itself. Lunch is being served in the dining saloon, but the hum of the ship is what holds your attention first. That deep, soft vibration beneath your feet has become oddly reassuring, like a lullaby woven through the air. It reminds you that somewhere below, unseen but precise, massive engines are beating time into the Atlantic, turning the sea into silk. When you step into the dining saloon, it's bright with chatter. Gone is the grandeur of last night's dinner today, its sunlight, laughter, and the occasional burst of silver cutlery against china. A steward guides you to a table near the starboard windows, where sunlight dances across the white-paneled walls. You can see the faint shimmer of the ocean through the glass, each wave catching the light like a blade turned in slow motion. The luncheon menu lies folded beside your plate, a minor miracle in itself. Oysters, consommé fermier, salmon mayonnaise, lamb, with mint sauce, roast beef, and custard pudding, followed by wine or coffee. The variety is almost absurd when you consider that this is a ship at sea. You order lightly salmon and a bit of bread, but your friend Maggie, already in mid-conversation with the table next to yours, insists on tasting half the menu. "Have you heard?" she says between bites. "There's to be a gala dinner when we reach Sunday. The captain's table, no less. I'm hoping to charm an invitation." She winks, then lowers her voice. "They say the Astors are hosting a private supper too. The very picture of American money." Across from you, an older gentleman sets down his wineglass. "These ships are floating cities now," he says with quiet pride. "One can eat finer at sea than in half the hotels of Europe." You nod, smiling politely, though your thoughts drift back to that small slip of paper pinned near the wireless room. Ice in the lanes ahead. You've tucked the memory away, but it lingers like a tune half remembered. The afternoon stretches in a golden haze. The sun, bright and unbroken, turns the sea to polished glass. After lunch, you find yourself drawn back to the deck, where the air has softened and the chill from morning has mellowed into something almost tender. Stewards move quietly among the deck chairs, folding and unfolding rugs, adjusting the angles of parasols for the ladies. The orchestra's music drifts faintly upward through the open doors below violins, soft and sure, playing something slow and romantic. You settle into your deck chair again, the same one from morning, and close your eyes. The air smells of sea and varnish, the faint tang of coal far away. The steady hum beneath the wood seems to pulse in time with your heartbeat. For a long while, there's nothing but calm, the kind of silence that's alive, full of the promise of distance. Somewhere nearby, two gentlemen are talking business. One murmurs about stocks, another about shipping lines and future voyages. The words roll by, like the tide, smooth and irrelevant. To your left, a pair of young women in traveling coats are sketching the ocean horizon in a shared notebook, their pencils scratching softly as they giggle over one another's attempts. "This light makes everything look new," one of them says. "Even the sea seems freshly painted." You open your eyes and glance toward the horizon. She's right, the ocean seems too perfect, too calm, almost staged. The line between sea and sky blurs, a watercolor of blue upon blue. The Titanic cuts through it effortlessly, leaving a trail of foam that unfurls behind her like silk ribbon. A steward passes by, offering postcards embossed with the ship's crest. You buy one, more out of sentiment than need, and take out your fountain pen. "Dearest mother," you begin, writing carefully as the ship's motion rocks the words slightly askew. "We are at sea, and everything is splendid. The ship is immense and Dolce, steady as a house. You would laugh to see how grandly everyone eats. No one speaks of the crossing as a challenge, only as a holiday. It feels as though the sea itself has agreed to behave, just for us." You pause, then add almost absently, "There was a note this morning about ice ahead, but the officers seem perfectly at ease. No one could imagine danger aboard such a ship." The ink glistens wet on the paper for a moment before you blot it dry. You hand the postcard to the steward to be mailed at the next port, Queenstown, and watch as he tucks it neatly into his pocket. The ship's bell rings faintly in the distance, and the rhythm of the day shifts. Afternoon tea begins, and with it comes the subtle migration of passengers toward the lounges. The air fills with the scent of scones, butter, and warm pastries. You follow Maggie inside to the Palm Court, a room glowing with filtered sunlight and soft chatter. The walls are lined with trellised flowers, and the entire space smells faintly of roses and fresh linen. "Now this is the life," Maggie sighs, accepting a delicate china cup from a steward. Tea in the middle of the Atlantic, served by men who never lose their balance. Civilization has peaked. You can't help but laugh. "Let's hope it's not all downhill from here." As if on cue, a small ripple of laughter runs through the room, someone telling a story at a nearby table. Something about the absurdity of life belts and safety drills. "They say we're to have one tomorrow," the woman announces to her companions. Imagine, as though this ship could possibly sink. The group laughs again, light and unbothered. The irony is invisible, still unborn. You sip your tea and glance through the window. The sea beyond is calm, but the light has shifted subtly, the brilliant blue of earlier now giving way to something softer, almost metallic. Clouds drift low on the horizon, pale as breath. The ship's engines maintain their steady hum, but you can feel a faint undercurrent of power in them now, a sense of gathering momentum. The captain passes through the lounge a few minutes later, tall and white-bearded, his uniform impeccable. Conversations quiet briefly as he nods to a few passengers, his expression calm, unreadable. Maggie leans close and whispers, "Captain Smith himself. They say this is his final voyage before retirement." "He looks every bit the part," you murmur, watching him disappear through the far door. When tea concludes, you and Maggie decide to walk again before dressing for dinner. The deck is emptier now, the wind a little cooler. The sea stretches endless and indifferent, the sky bleeding slowly toward gold. You stop near the bow, where the air feels sharper, freer. The ship's flags ripple lazily overhead. "It's strange," Maggie says softly, gazing out across the water. "You'd think the sea would make one feel small, but somehow it doesn't. I feel powerful, as though we've tamed it." You understand what she means. The Titanic seems less a vessel than a world unto itself, self-contained, invincible. You glance down at the bow cutting through the water, and it looks effortless, regal. The sun dips lower, brushing the ocean with fire. A steward rings a bell in the distance, signaling dinner hour, and you realize how quickly the day has vanished. Already passengers are trickling back inside, their voices mingling with the soft hum of evening preparations. You turn toward the entrance, but something makes you hesitate, some small, inexplicable pull to look back one more time. Far off on the horizon, there's a flicker, Just a glint, nothing more, a brief flash of light that might be a reflection, or perhaps a ship, or perhaps nothing at all. You squint, but it's gone before you can be sure. The sea resumes its perfect calm. Coming? Maggie calls, her voice carrying lightly over the wind. You nod and follow, though a faint unease curls beneath. Your ribs, nameless and thin as a thread. By the time you reach your stateroom, the light outside has dimmed to a dusky silver. Emily has laid out your evening gown, a deep sapphire silk that seems to catch the very color of the sea. She hums softly as she works, her movements efficient and calm. "Another beautiful evening, madam," she says. You smile, though your thoughts linger on that flicker on the horizon. "Yes," you say slowly. "Another beautiful evening." But even as you say it, you can't shake the feeling that the ocean, so calm and obedient all day, is holding its breath. Twilight arrives like a velvet ribbon, slipping through the porthole and softening every edge. Emily has already turned the room into a little atelier, hairpins lined like soldiers, the brush warming by the heater, a small saucer of cologne glinting amber in the lamplight. You wash away the salt kiss of afternoon and let her work begin. Hair lifted and coaxed into a quiet architecture, a few jeweled combs catching the last of the day. The evening corset draws you taller. The silk of your gown deep sapphire falls with that gravity only good fabric knows. Long gloves slide up your arms, cool and decisive. A fan, for ceremony. A shawl, for sense. When you stand, the mirror gives you a version of yourself you meet only on grand nights. Composed, candlelit, a little remote. Corridors murmur with expectancy. The carpet hushes every step, but you feel the pulse of the ship, as if through the bones of the floor, confident, unhurried, sure of its own power. At the landing, the grand staircase is already a procession. A waterfall of satin, black ties knotted like small vows, a flash of medals on an elderly gentleman's chest. The glass dome above fades from pewter to ink. Electric light takes over, gentling the scene into warmth. Somewhere aft, a bugle sings two neat phrases to signal the hour, and conversations fold themselves into smiles. The evening has begun. Custom leads everyone to the reception room before dinner. It glows white paneling, palm fronds, a small constellation of lamps turned low. A steward circulates with tiny glasses of something amber that tastes like an apologetic fire. You drift among introductions the way the ship drifts into the night gracefully, with the sense of a choreography older than any single voyage. Names form and fade. What lingers are impressions. A frank laugh, an accent that turns iron into aryon, a cameo of uncommon delicacy at a stranger's throat. A young officer, fresh-faced and polite, answers someone's cheerful question about the weather with the calm certainty of a man who has made a private promise to the horizon. "Clear, sir. Cold as we go northing, but a fine night." When the doors to the saloon open, the orchestra reshapes the air, violins threading a path through voices, cello answering like a second thought. You take your place at a table dressed as if for a small coronation. Silverware in a glinting squadron, crystal so thin your breath could shiver it. Tonight's service is unhurried ceremony, an overture of oysters crisp as the tide, a whisper of soup fragrant with tarragon, fish glazed to mirror sheen. Then something princely under a thin veil of truffles. Conversation edits itself between courses, never hurrying, never stalling. Maggie leans in between sips of a French white and murmurs, far too seriously for the mischief in her eyes. If civilization ever falls, it won't be from lack of pastry. You laugh, and the sound is absorbed by 1,000 others. At another table, a violinist lifts a phrase that brushes the edge of recognition. Dvořák, perhaps, then something lighter, almost modern, that sets a few feet tapping beneath the tablecloths. Candles multiply in the glass of the high windows. Beyond them, night presses its face to the panes, star-pricked and bottomless. After the roast and before the pudding, the room loosens shoulders, lower, voices warm. The orchestra gives way to a waltz that makes you ache to be unpinned from your chair. Toasts are offered, never boisterous, always tender, to the voyage, to old friends met anew at sea, to the notion that crossing an ocean can be refined into an art. A steward passes quietly with a silver epergne of fruit. The scent of orange peel lifts like a bright idea. Tradition suggests the ladies will drift to the lounge, leaving cigars and brandy to the men. Tradition does not know Maggie. Let's tour, she decides as coffee lands, her eyes already glittering with the effort of being good too long. You agree, grateful for movement. The lounge receives you first: ivory walls, green velvet, low talk, a set of whist quietly brewing in the corner. A matron in mauve tells a tiny scandal about someone's pearls with the air of reading aloud from Horace. You escape kindly. The reading and writing room holds a different candle of silence. Ladies bend over thick cream paper. The scratch of nibs could be rain. You pause at a desk, simply to inhale the smell of ink and gum arabic, to touch the headed paper, RMS Titanic, in relief beneath your fingers. Your own note can wait. The night is a better letter than anything you could write. The veranda cafe is a pocket garden. Palms staging shadows on the floor. Little tables shining like good ideas. Here the night feels near. Open panes admit the thinnest draught, touched with salt, and a cleanness that lives only far from land. A trio at the next table is debating the merits of a promenade in such brisk air. A steward appears with shawls before they finish deciding. You and Maggie accept tea you hadn't meant to order, because the cups come with slices of lemon cut thin as sunlight. Time softens around the saucers. Curiosity turns the handle on the smoking room door. Custom frowns and then forgets to enforce itself. Mahogany, green leather, a slow constellation of embers at the ends of cigars men pitched at. Angles of comfort known only to clubs and ships. A gentleman is losing modestly at cards. Someone tells a story about the Berlin Bourse that sounds like a Greek myth dressed in ledgers. Brandy moves from tray to hand with ecclesiastical gravity. The room smells like decisions. You take one more step along the evening's braid and find yourself near a stair that spills onto the promenade. The door opens on a draught that is not merely cool but declarative. The night outside is a presence. It carries a scent of iron and stars. Shall we? Maggie asks, and the question writes a little thrill under your ribs. Yes. Always yes to decks at night. The promenade is a ribbon of pale planking flooded with starlight. The sea has become something different, a blackness that isn't empty so much as perfectly complete. You rest your gloved hands on the rail and feel, even through kid leather, a bite you did not expect. Your breath makes ghosts. Wind finds your hair despite pins and certainty. The funnels hum like sleeping beasts. Their warm breath goes straight up to join the cold. Below, water breaks and mends itself in a trail the color of mercury. There is almost no swell. The ship passes through the Atlantic as a swan through ink. Far forward, an officer's silhouette moves and stills. His cap brim blocks a small constellation for a heartbeat, then restores it. A little farther aft, a couple walk arm in arm without speaking, their silence practicing intimacy. Colder, isn't it? Maggie says softly, as though loud words could chip the glass of the night. Yes. You are surprised by how much yes there is. The cold has teeth. It's clean, exact, almost medicinal. You think of the afternoon's warmth as a story told by a cheerful liar. Somewhere, a door opens and closes, warm music breathes out and is instantly disciplined by the air. You walk, the boards speaking faintly under your soles, and with each dozen steps the stars thicken until they seem to have weight. When you pause at the lee rail, a faint sheen meets your eye, no more than a suggestion, like breath on a mirror. You lay one fingertip to the varnish and find the slightest rasp, a rumor of frost. The sea talks in whispers against the hull. You look out and see nothing and everything, a horizon erased, a sky put in its place. Come inside, Maggie suggests at last, half laughing at her own reluctance. We'll turn to statues if we admire it much longer. In a moment, you say, not yet ready to surrender the purity of the cold. You listen to the ship's steady heart, to the small creaks that are simply timber remembering it was once a tree, to the squeak of a davit far above, pivoting a fraction in the air. You listen, and discover you are holding your breath with the Atlantic. Then so faint you could mistake it for thought, a bell somewhere forward answers the stars with 3 quick, bright notes. You straighten, the cold suddenly articulate on your skin. Maggie's question, "Did you hear?" is caught by the wind and carried toward the bow, where lantern light draws a narrow, purposeful line through the dark. The bell's chime still lingers somewhere inside your bones as you step back into the warmth of the corridor. The change is abrupt, your face tingling, the air heavy again with perfume, cigars and electricity. You turn once, half expecting someone to follow you in from the cold, but the door closes quietly behind you, sealing away the crisp edge of the Atlantic. For a moment, you stand still, uncertain whether the sound you heard was truly a bell or just the mind's trick when confronted with too much silence. Emily appears as if conjured, her timing unnervingly perfect. "I was just coming to look for you, madam," she says softly. "You'll catch a chill." She takes your shawl and drapes it neatly over her arm, her eyes flicking briefly to your flushed cheeks. "Was it very cold?" "Colder than I expected," you admit. "The air, it bites, somehow." She nods, almost to herself. "The sailors say we're passing through northern lanes now. The captain's orders are to keep the fires steady, but not to push her too fast." Her tone suggests she overhears more in the servants' passages than most passengers imagine. You smile faintly, comforted by her calm. "I suppose she's earned her rest as much as we have." "Indeed, madam." Emily hesitates, as if she might say more, then thinks better of it. "Will you take chocolate before bed?" "Yes, thank you. And please leave the curtains open tonight. I want to see the sea." She curtsies lightly and disappears. You remain in the corridor for a moment, still feeling the cold clinging to your gloves. The vibration of the ship beneath your feet feels almost louder now, more alive. Somewhere distant, machinery hums a low, endless heartbeat that might once have been reassuring, but now sounds just a shade too present, too aware of itself. When you return to your stateroom, the bed is turned down, the lamps dimmed, and the faint scent of cocoa drifts through the air. On your pillow, a folded note rests beside a small sprig of lavender, a courtesy from the steward's staff. You sit at the small desk by the porthole, your reflection caught between lamp glow and the vast black mirror of the sea outside. You can't see the horizon anymore, only your own faint outline superimposed over infinity. It's strange how quickly the ship becomes a world of its own. The people outside on the deck, in the wireless room, in the engine corridors miles below your feet, they're all part of a living organism you'll never quite see. You take up your pen and begin to write in your journal. The sea tonight looks like glass. The stars lie so close upon it, it's difficult to tell where one ends and the other begins. The air has turned cold, sharper than before. They say we're making excellent time, though there's no sense of movement, only stillness disguised as progress. You pause, the nib of your pen hovering. That sound again, a low clang, distant, metallic. Perhaps just a door closing somewhere along the corridor. Still, you can't help glancing toward the porthole, as though you might glimpse the source of it. Only blackness, endless and perfect. Emily returns quietly, setting the tray down beside you. The steam curls in the lamplight. "Your chocolate, madam," she says. "Thank you, Emily. You should rest soon." "I will, madam. The crew keep long hours on nights like these." She glances once toward the porthole before smoothing her apron. "They say the stars look so near tonight, you could reach out and pluck one." You follow her gaze. "Yes, like flowers from a frozen garden." When she's gone, you sip the chocolate slowly, letting its warmth drive out the last chill of the deck. The hum beneath the floorboards steadies again, softer now, like a cat, purring at the end of the bed. The air feels safe, contained. You blow out one of the lamps, leaving only the smaller by the bed. Shadows soften. But sleep, once so easily found aboard, won't come tonight. Something in the air feels different, not wrong, but awake. You can hear the faint clink of metal through the walls, the shuffle of footsteps far down the corridor. The ship doesn't sleep either, it only rests in motion. You rise again, crossing to the porthole. The glass is cold beneath your fingertips. Outside, the Atlantic lies in perfect stillness, so calm it almost looks solid. For a heartbeat, you imagine you could walk across it, one step after another, toward that endless glittering dome of stars. It's beautiful, yes, but in that beauty, something unknowable stirs. The way a mirror is beautiful, until you realize it's looking back. You tell yourself it's the fatigue of travel, that all great ships hum differently in the night. You draw the curtains at last, and return to bed, pulling the covers close. The sheets are warm, scented faintly with soap and starch. Your body relaxes, even as your thoughts refuse to. Hours seem to pass like the slow turning of a music box. Somewhere above, faint footsteps echo, muffled and distant. You imagine the watchmen on the forward decks, collars pulled high, eyes scanning the horizon for nothing in particular. The stars out there must look impossibly bright from their vantage point. A million white candles suspended above black glass. A clock chimes softly 11:30. The ship feels utterly still now. The vibration that had been so steady earlier has softened to a hum you can barely detect. It's as though the ocean has swallowed the sound whole. You drift in and out of light dreams, fragmented images of starlight, of laughter in the lounge, of music fading into silence. Then, through the thin veil of sleep, a sound threads its way to you. Subtle, almost polite, yet enough to jolt you upright before you fully understand why. A muffled grind, a vibration, then a long, drawn-out shudder. Not violent, not loud, but unmistakably different. The glass in the porthole quivers ever so slightly. You hold your breath, waiting for another sound to follow, a shout, a whistle, a bell, but nothing comes. The engines seem to hesitate for the briefest moment, then resume their rhythm as if nothing at all has happened. The silence afterward feels too neat, too rehearsed. You sit there in the dim light, pulse quickened, every sense leaning toward the stillness. The hum of the ship steadies again, but your heart does not. Was it a wave, a shift in the machinery? You tell yourself that's all it could be. After all, the Titanic is vast, alive with mechanisms you can't begin to name. There are hundreds of noises in a ship this size. And yet, that wasn't one you'd heard before. You lie back down, pulling the blanket up, willing yourself to calm. The warmth of the cabin seeps in again, wrapping you like a promise. Surely, by morning, this will be one of those curious memories you can't quite place a moment half dreamed. Your eyes drift closed. But somewhere deep within the ship's heart, in the labyrinth of metal and fire, where the stokers feed the great furnaces, the rhythm has faltered, the thrum has changed key. And far above, in the crow's nest, a young lookout still clutches the bell rope, breath frosting in the freezing air, eyes locked on something vast and pale rising out of the dark. The bell rings again, 3 sharp, bright notes that echo down into the sleeping decks below. You are already half awake when the second tremor arrives, not a crash, not the catastrophe your imagination would expect, but a long, feline scrape running the length of the ship's nerves. Glass on the dressing table ticks against its saucer. Somewhere behind the walls a metal voice complains and goes quiet. Then, almost indecently, everything settles. Silence has a way of passada, making its own noise. You sit up, listening to the absence. No churn from the screws, no steady throb that has, until now, scored every moment aboard. The quiet is so pure, it feels like pressure. You glance to the porthole, nothing but a black circle framed in brass, and beyond it darkness dense enough to be a substance. The lamp throws a modest halo across the carpet. Your shoes look like small animals frozen mid-step. A soft footfall in the corridor. A door somewhere opens on a gasp of cold air, shuts with care. You slide from the bed, cross the room, and ease your own door an inch. The passage is a ribbon of muted light. A steward hurries by with his cap askew, the set of his shoulders polite but urgent. He notices you at once, he seems to notice everyone at once, and manages a reassuring half-smile without slowing. Nothing to trouble yourself over, madam. Only a precaution. The phrase lands with the professional gentleness of a hand turning down a lampshade. Has Something? You don't finish. Asking makes it too real. Just a momentary stop. He lowers his voice. Please dress warmly, if you would. Captain's orders. And he is gone, the corridor swallowing his steps. You leave the door ajar and light the second lamp. The room, so civilized a few minutes ago, has taken on a strange clarity, as if everything has been freshly labeled. Stockings, boots, the sensible coat you brought for brisk mornings you never met, each becomes a decision. You dress quickly, fingers clumsy in the quiet. A hat seems ridiculous until it doesn't. You tie it on. When you step into the corridor, other doors are opening like flowers at night. Faces appear sleep-creased, curious, amused. No one looks afraid, not properly. People exchange small remarks that sound like questions disguised as jokes. A drill at this hour? Has the mail boat come unannounced? Perhaps the engines are sulking. There's a collective confidence that clings like perfume. This is Titanic. She does not do drama. Maggie materializes with uncanny timing, a shawl wrapped like a battle plan. There you are, she says, in a stage whisper. My maid swears she felt a bump. I told her ship's bump, city's bump. We must see. Her eyes shine with a practical light. You nod, grateful for her certainty, and the two of you join the little current of passengers moving, politely, toward the main companionways. On the staircase, evening's glamour has been replaced by a strange, intimate informality, men in greatcoats thrown over dinner shirts, ladies in cloaks buttoned over lace, slippers peeking from beneath wool. The orchestra has vanished. The air carries only the faintest echo of a note left hanging when someone lifted a bow and reconsidered. A junior officer passes with the efficient speed of a thought. Please keep to the starboard side, ladies and gentlemen. Dress warmly. We'll have you back in your cabins shortly. The repetition of no's courtesy is almost hypnotic. You angle toward a door to the promenade and crack it open. Night hits like a held breath released. The cold is no longer an idea, but a presence sharp, dry, clean as broken glass. A scatter of fellow conspirators has already slipped out, their footprints crisp along the deck like punctuation. You step into the wind long enough to recognize a glitter under the rail, tiny crystals rimming the varnish. Not hoarfrost grown from air, something more immediate. Maggie touches a drift caught in a corner seam and laughs, startled. Ice, she declares, as if naming it makes it constructive. Well, that explains the bump. Away forward, shapes move, crewmen at the davits, covers lifted from boats, canvas folded back on itself like pale tongues. The sight is so at odds with the tone of everything else that your mind rejects it at first as an exercise. Drill, then demonstration. The ship's people are nothing if not keen on routines. You follow Maggie, back inside where the cold can't revise your thoughts. A stewardess, cap neat, hands steady, meets you halfway along the passage. Kindly fetch your lifebelts and come along to the boat deck, ladies. She might be inviting you to tea. The phrase lifebelts wobbles in the air like a plate that won't quite settle. In the stateroom, Emily is already ahead of you, white with competence. The bulky cork jackets lie on the bed like domesticated sea creatures. She holds one up, and you slip into it, surprised by the weight, by the way it rearranges your posture into something blunt and childlike. Gloves, she insists, pulling them onto your hands as if threading a needle. Scarf. Take this, too. She tucks a small folded packet into your coat. What? You do not ask. Her eyes flick once to the porthole, then back to you. I'll be right behind, madam. Are the others? All being called, ma'am. It's orderly. It is, and yet she's fastening the last tie, with a speed that belongs to another register of truth. Back into the passage, then. The ship's formality has thinned to reveal its bones. Crew at stations, doors propped, voices low and direct. An officer's command travels like a wire down the stairwell. Women and children, this way, if you please. The words have been spoken too often in stories to sound entirely real. Hearing them here gives them weight. They tilt the air. At the boat deck, the The cold steps into your lungs and stretches. The night is a cathedral of stars, the kind of sky sailors write down to make sure it happened. The sea, perversely calm, holds the ship like a mirror holds a face. Boats hang outboard now, their ropes groaning softly. Sailors stand in pairs, hands on falls, eyes on officers. The captain is a pale certainty a little aft, beard catching the lamp glow, his silence translating into movement all around him. Passengers gather in clusters, the way people do at railway platforms or church doors. Some are cheerful on principle. Some are offended by the interruption. Some have already prepared themselves to be noble and are practicing. A man jokes, back by midnight, then, and someone else laughs too loudly. A child points at the ice, sugar dusting the deck edge, and asks if it fell from the moon. A whistle shrills forward. Another answers aft. Numbers are called. The arithmetic of boats begins. Near you, a sailor reaches for a woman's elbow, and she startles, then apologizes for startling. Maggie takes your hand in a grip, 1 degree short of painful. It's cold, she says, as if it's the one fact that can be stated without consequence. Her breath traces a brief cloud and vanishes. A hush runs through the crowd nearest the rail. Your gaze follows theirs instinctively down the vast black side, to the waterline written in lamplight. For a moment, you see the ship anew, not as rooms and carpets and chandeliers, but as a body in water immense, delicate in the wrong ways, subject to arithmetic you cannot do. The deck has the slightest slant that could be fancy, then isn't. From forward, a voice with authority and salt in it, lower away. Ropes begin to move, white against the dark. The first boat dips, steadies, drops a handspan more. Wood croons in protest, then agrees. A woman laughs, too high, and bites it off. Somewhere behind you, a new sound enters the ledger of the night, thin at first, then persistent. Not alarm, not yet. Something mechanical, waking or sleeping, you cannot tell. The boat descends past lamplit ports that catch faces like cameos. Far below, the ocean waits, black as a closed eye. When the falls pause, someone calls for silence. You don't breathe. For the space of a held heartbeat, the ship itself seems to listen. And from the bow far in that direction where the stars look coldest comes a sound no room can domesticate, a low, private rush, as if something big is learning to speak. The night has altered. It feels like the air itself has learned fear. You don't see panic, not yet, but it moves invisibly among the crowd, threading through polite words and forced smiles like an unseen hand tugging at lace. The deck beneath you hums faintly, an echo of the life that still churns deep in the ship's heart. Somewhere below, the engineers work without pause, keeping the power steady, the lights glowing. For now, the illusion of safety holds. Maggie's hand is still looped through yours. Her glove is damp from the frost forming on the rail, and you can feel her pulse, quick and defiant. They've said it's only a precaution, she murmurs, her voice trembling just enough to betray what she doesn't want to admit. The captain himself said so. You nod, though your eyes drift toward the starboard side where the lifeboats hang suspended over the black void. The sight of them is strangely unconvincing. Small, open shells meant for a handful of people, swinging gently against a ship that seems to stretch forever. The numbers don't add up. Even your untrained mind can feel that. The officers' voices cut cleanly through the cold. Women and children first this way, please. Keep calm. Their tone is practiced calm, the kind used by men who know that calm is already slipping away. Passengers obey, though many laugh nervously as they gather, pretending this is merely a test. What an adventure, one woman says, half to herself. I suppose we'll have quite the story to tell at breakfast. Somewhere near the bow, a sound reverberates up through the deck, a deep metallic groan, low and mournful. It fades quickly, swallowed by the night. You don't mention it to Maggie. There's no point. The first lifeboat lowers with a reluctant creak. You watch the ropes slide through sailors' gloved hands, the women clutching their coats and children, the men standing back in forced casualness. The boat dips, steadies, then begins its descent into the ink-dark Atlantic. The faces of those aboard grow smaller, ghostlier, until they're nothing but pale ovals suspended between ship and sea. For a long moment, the boat just floats there, adrift beside the hull. Then it begins to row away, the oars breaking the water in slow silver arcs. The sound is faint, almost polite, but it tears something deep inside you. The ship is too bright, the sea too quiet. An officer's voice breaks the silence. "We'll need more ladies here, please. Step forward. Quickly now." No one moves. The crowd hesitates, a collective pause born of disbelief. The Titanic can't sink. Everyone knows that. She's unsinkable, unsinkable. It's been printed in every paper from London to New York. The word still rings in your ears like a charm. It's as though the simple act of saying it enough could keep her afloat. Another lifeboat swings out. The machinery creaks again, louder this time, and you notice frost glistening on the ropes. The temperature has dropped sharply. The air feels like glass breaking against your skin. Your breath turns to smoke as you exhale. Somewhere far off, the sea whispers against the hull, a sound soft enough to be mistaken for silk dragging across the floor. "Ladies, please," another officer calls. "Step forward now, there's room for 10 more." Maggie exhales sharply beside you. "They're serious," she whispers. "They mean for us to go." "Yes," you say quietly. "I think they do." But the thought of stepping into one of those boats feels impossible. Leaving the safety of the Titanic, this great, glowing ship with her music and her lights and her civilization, is like stepping off the edge of the world into the jaws of nothing. You glance toward the open deck and catch sight of the band gathered near the lounge entrance. They've resumed playing. Not loudly, not triumphantly, but softly, waltzes, hymns, little reminders of beauty. The music drifts over the crowd like a prayer said under the breath. People calm slightly. It's remarkable, the power of sound. Even you feel your shoulders drop, your heartbeat slowing as the violins carry on, refusing to acknowledge fear. The ship, for a moment, feels alive again. Then, faint but unmistakable, comes the tilt. You feel it not as a lurch, but as a quiet wrongness. Beneath your feet, a new angle, subtle but certain. The deck no longer feels perfectly level. The hum of the engines has ceased entirely now, and with their absence, the air feels thinner, more fragile. The unsinkable ship is listing. Someone gasps nearby. "She's tipping." "Only slightly," a steward replies quickly. "Just to adjust the balance, that's all. Nothing to worry about." But his eyes, when they flick toward the bow, say otherwise. Another groan rolls through the hull, louder this time, and the deck seems to shiver beneath your boots. Maggie grips your arm. "Come on," she says fiercely. "We're not waiting for permission." You follow her toward the next lifeboat station. The crowd has thickened, more women now, faces pale beneath lamplight, children crying softly into fur collars. Men stand aside, their eyes fixed somewhere beyond the deck, as if trying to see what can't yet be seen. The officers are more direct now, their voices firmer. "Step in quickly, please. Keep hold of the ropes. Sit low." The lifeboat sways as the first passengers climb aboard. A woman stumbles and is caught by a sailor. Another refuses to sit until her husband promises he'll follow in the next boat. The moment she's lowered away, you can hear her calling back, her voice thinning with distance. Your turn comes. Maggie presses your hand. "Go," she says simply. You shake your head. "Not without you. I'll be right behind." You hesitate, the space between deck and boat yawning wider than logic allows. Then a sailor reaches up, firm hands gripping your arm. "Step in, miss. Quick as you, please." His tone leaves no room for grace. You start to move, but Maggie pulls you back. "Wait," she whispers sharply. Her gaze fixes on something over your shoulder. You turn. At the far edge of the deck, the ice crystals that had been harmless decoration now sparkle like spilled stars under the electric light. They're thickening, melting, refreezing, proof of how bitterly the temperature has fallen. A breath of wind sweeps through, colder than anything you've felt yet. And then comes the sound, faint, distant, from the bow. It's not metallic this time, but something else, something alive. A deep, resonant crack, like the sea itself speaking for the first time all night. The music falters. Conversations die mid-sentence. Heads turn instinctively toward the front of the ship. "What was that?" someone murmurs. No one answers. The officer at the davit stops mid-command, his eyes fixed toward the dark horizon, where the ship's great body disappears into shadow. For a moment, the only thing you can hear is the sea itself, a whisper, a sigh, a question. Maggie tightens her grip on your arm, her voice barely audible. "Something's happening," she breathes. And though you can't see it yet, the ship's heartbeat has changed again. Far below, water is moving where water should not be. The Titanic exhales once softly, almost tenderly, and the deck tilts another degree beneath your feet. The violin picks up its melody again, thinner now, uncertain. You look at Maggie. She looks back. Neither of you speaks. The night has finally found its voice. The ship has shifted from theatre to command post. Courtesies are still spoken, but they're spoken over action. Lines creak, blocks squeal. Sailors stamp frost from the planks with a kind of careful violence. The deck's new angle is small enough to argue with, and large enough to win the argument every time you try to forget it. People are learning how to stand again, one foot braced, the other, ready to adjust. That's what the night does now. It teaches. A whistle trills, sharp as a pin. Boat no. 6 stand by. The officer's voice is clipped, clean. He could be calling a cricket score, if cricket decided outcomes. Women step forward in fits and starts. Some kiss gloved hands to husbands' cheeks and miss by an inch. Some don't look back at all, because looking makes leaving a negotiation instead of a plan. A child wails once and then not again, as if the air has stolen the second cry. You register details with a hunger that feels like thirst. The cork life jackets thump when people shift their weight. The hemp of the falls leaves pale burns on sailors' hands. A stewardess keeps repeating, "Mind the gap," in the same tone she used for tea at 4. Except this time her mouth is too dry to manage the smile at the end. Overhead, the funnels send up breath you can see but not hear. Underfoot, a tremor comes and goes, something heavy, relocating itself in the ship's mind. Maggie's eyes are bright, not from tears. "We go together," she says, as if you've suggested otherwise. Emily appears at your elbow with the quiet certainty of tides. Her hair is damp at the temples, a hat jammed on, coat misbuttoned and uncaring. She presses a small parcel into your hand. "Biscuits," she says simply, "and a flask. It's absurd and perfect." You tuck it deep into your pocket, the weight of it far bigger than its size. The band has moved closer to the open doors, huddled under a patch of light, their breath rising in small ghosts between phrases. They've given up on popular airs. Now it's things with bones, hymns and old songs that know how to stand up in weather. The music doesn't fight the night. It accompanies it, like a careful friend. Another boat kisses outward from the davits. The list makes the angle awkward. A sailor swears softly, ashamed of the sound as soon as it leaves him. Lower away handsomely. The boat drops, hesitates, drops again. You count the women inside without meaning to 12, 15, not enough for the space you can see. The arithmetic you refused to do earlier begins to do itself. Word passes like a current. They're sending a call. CQD, new letters as well. You don't know exactly what that means. Only that the wireless room, so alive with crackle in the daylight, has become a throat cleared toward the horizon. Somewhere out there is an answer. Somewhere, engines are being turned toward you. Or so the rumor decides, then repeats until it sounds like a plan. A spray of white blooms in the sky to starboard a rocket, ripping open a flower of light and ash. It hangs for a breathless second and falls, bright pieces extinguishing themselves as if embarrassed by hope. The faces around you turn up as one. You've never seen so many people share a single expression. When the dark reasserts itself, it feels thicker, as if it has learned your names. Orders change. Timber. No, gentlemen, back, sir, back. A man coolly offers his seat to a stranger's wife. Another argues rank and gets none. A third makes a small bow to his daughter and places her carefully into the hands reaching down, as though passing her to a pew from an aisle. A stewardess spreads a rug over knees in the boat, with such practiced tenderness that you nearly cry, because even now, service remains a language. Room for two more. The call lands at your feet. Maggie squeezes your hand once, hard. You hesitate, because hesitating is what the part of you that believes in stairs and electric light and menus has always done. The deck gives the softest sigh under your boots, and something in you stops deferring. You step forward. The gap between ship and boat is only a yard and an era. A sailor's hands find your forearms rough and astonishingly warm. The cork jacket catches the thwart with a thud that makes you blush, as if you've interrupted a sentence. You turn to take Maggie's hand and a jolt ripples through the hull. Not loud, not long, but intimate, as if the ship has moved in her sleep and learned something about herself she didn't want to know. Wait, Maggie says, and you don't know if she means go or don't. The officer at the falls reads the flinch in the crowd like a book and raises his voice just enough to stitch the rent. Steady, lads, lower away. The ropes pay out, the boat sinks an inch, then 3, then the rail is at your shoulder, then your temple, then above you like a parapet. The hull's steel slides by paint, rivets, lamplight caught in oval windows. A woman's face framed in one for the breath of a moment, her lips moving around a prayer you cannot hear. You stop level with another open port, where a steward inside has jammed a trunk to keep the water's first curiosity out. He sees you, nods once, and goes on being impossible. The boat drops again. The ship's side becomes less wall and more sky. Cold arrives from below like a thought you don't admit until it's fully formed. The oar blades clatter. A child hiccups a sob into a muff. Some brave fool makes a joke about the view, and 2 people laugh because kindness sometimes looks exactly like foolishness. Hold her. A shout from above, the falls jam. For a breath you hang between 2 worlds, swaying. The cork jacket presses your throat. Maggie's knee knocks yours. The sea opens its black palm and waits without threat or invitation. A sailor at the bow saws at a tangled turn with his knife, teeth bared in concentration. The band finds a new key and carries on. From up on the boat deck, a flare of argument. A man refuses the backward step that would put his wife in and him out. An officer answers in a voice edged with steel and pity. The man steps back because tone is sometimes heavier than muscle. Another rocket flowers and dies. Its afterlight paints the Atlantic into a field of low, pale ghosts. You realize, with a comprehension that arrives not in the head but the spine, that the sea is not empty. It is strewn with small, hard brightnesses, the old ice strewn like constellations fallen to water. Ready? The bowman calls. The knot gives. The falls sing. The boat descends in a series of gentle insults. Oars are shipped. Hands reach for them, as if for proof. The distance to the surface is smaller than the distance you feel. In the moment before the boat kisses water, sound seems to step back to make room. You hear only the small domestic noises of courage. A glove being tugged tighter, teeth on a cork strap, someone humming half a bar to stop a full cry. The skiff rises, strikes again, and then chooses to float. A breath leaves the whole boat as if it had been held by a single chest. Push off, give way. The oars bite. The ship's side slides away with the gravity of a planet losing a moon. Above, the rail is a black line pricked with pale faces. Uncountable. A shawl loosens and flutters down like a slow bird. A hand reaches for it and misses on purpose. You look back because not looking back would be treason. The Titanic stands enormous and absurdly gentle in the night, her lights unwavering, her music stubborn as prayer. From this low, cold place, you see her lean with more honesty than the deck allowed. She is not asking for help. She is announcing a decision. A shout tears across the water. Room for more. We'll come back. We'll. The wind edits the promise into something kinder and less binding. Rowlocks creak. Breaths fog. The boat grinds a little on invisible slush and frees herself with a shove. Then, as if the sea itself has drawn a breath to speak, all the electric lights along the ship's length flicker once, twice, then find themselves again. Every head turns up, oars falter a beat, and the band, impossibly, keeps time. The sea takes you in silence. The sound of the oars, slow, uneven, uncertain, becomes the only rhythm that matters. The men rowing barely speak. Each breath plumes white in the cold and vanishes instantly, devoured by the night. The ocean has a new voice, now a soft hiss that rises and falls with every stroke, as though the water itself were whispering secrets it's kept for centuries. The Titanic looms above you, immense, radiant, utterly still. From the lifeboat, she looks like a floating city suspended between two worlds, her hull glistening black as ink, her windows a constellation of gold. Smoke still curls lazily from her funnels, but there's a strange calm to it, like the exhale of something ancient and resigned. She's beautiful, someone whispers, and you realize they mean it not in admiration but in awe. There's a fragile reverence in that word, the same tone one might use at a graveside before the first handful of earth is thrown. Maggie sits beside you, her shawl drawn tightly around her shoulders. The cork life jacket has left a red mark across her neck. "I didn't think she'd look so peaceful," she says softly, eyes fixed on the ship. "It's wrong somehow." You don't answer. Words feel too small for the sight before you. The list is undeniable now, her bow sloping low toward the sea, her stern rising almost imperceptibly higher. And yet, the lights remain perfect, glowing evenly, as if the ship refuses to acknowledge what the ocean already knows. The music drifts faintly across the water, slower now, thinner, carried on the wind, like the memory of a melody rather than the sound itself. The officer in charge of your boat calls out to keep rowing. "Pull, lads. Keep her clear of the suction if she goes down." His voice cracks midway through, quickly smoothed into command again. The sailors obey, their movements mechanical, faces hard and grey in the starlight. The wooden oars groan against the locks, dripping frost into the water. You steal one last glance back. People still move on the decks, tiny silhouettes pacing, calling, waving. You can see flashes of white, the flutter of scarves or handkerchiefs, maybe signals to other boats that aren't yet filled. The cries are faint from this distance, carried away by the wind before they can become coherent words. The scale of it feels impossible. "I should have stayed," Maggie murmurs suddenly, as if confessing to no one. "There were still so many waiting." You shake your head. "We couldn't have helped them." "Maybe not, but they helped me." Her voice trembles on the edge of something larger, guilt, grief, or simply disbelief. "It doesn't seem fair, does it? To leave the music playing behind you like that." You glance toward the distant band, still lit by the soft electric glow from the deck. You can make out their shapes now, 5 small figures standing shoulder to shoulder, instruments gleaming faintly. They're playing something solemn, steady. It's not a waltz anymore, it's a hymn. You can't make out the melody at first, but then it finds you. "Nearer, my God, to thee." The notes travel across the water, thin but unbroken. No one in the boat speaks, no one dares. For the first time since leaving the ship, you feel your composure slip. You look down at your gloved hands, gripping the edge of the lifeboat, and realize they're trembling. The enormity of it presses down like weightless stone. You'd believe the Titanic could defy nature itself. Now you're watching that belief crumble, piece by piece, under a sky so calm it seems cruel. Another sound rises from the ship, a sharp crack, distant but unmistakable. The lifeboat rocks slightly in the ripple that follows. Someone gasps. A few of the women begin to cry quietly. "She's breaking," one of the sailors says, voice flat. "Hold your tongue," the officer snaps, though the look in his eyes betrays agreement. The deck lights flicker once, twice, and then miraculously hold steady again. The ship is fighting. The Titanic, even in her death throes, refuses to surrender quietly. You can almost feel the will of her, the engineers below decks still laboring in the rising water. the officers on the bridge holding the illusion of control for as long as they can. Then, in the distance, a flare bursts into the sky, a red star burning bright against the void. It hisses as it rises, casting light across the ocean. For a brief moment, everything is visible again. The ship, the sea, the scattering of lifeboats, drifting like crumbs on black velvet. The sight is so stark, so impossibly beautiful, that it steals your breath. When the light fades, darkness falls heavier than before. The temperature drops again. Your breath freezes in the air. The oars slow. The sailors' movements are sluggish, hands stiff with cold. Frost gathers on the wooden seats, on your coat, even on Maggie's lashes. The sea is turning to glass. You reach down, touching it, and recoil. It burns like fire. From the ship comes another terrible sound, a deep, thunderous groan that rolls through the water and into your bones. The bow has nearly vanished now, swallowed by the sea. You watch as one of the forward cranes tilts and disappears beneath the surface, a small cascade of sparks marking its fall. The stern lifts higher, lamps still glowing along its windows like the vertebrae of a dying giant. Someone whispers, "She's going," and then the words spread like contagion through the boat. People shift, twist to look, clutch one another. The officer shouts for silence, but no one can stop the collective gasp that escapes as the ship begins her final descent. The orchestra is still playing. You can see them even now, the bow of the violin catching light as it moves. The hymn swells once more before being swallowed by a sound greater than any instrument, the roar of water rushing inward, the shattering of glass, the tearing of steel. A moment later, the lights go out. Blackness. No more music, no more movement, only the sea, reclaiming its silence. Then comes the sound you will never forget. Not a scream, but hundreds of them overlapping, twisting, reaching across the water. The cries of those left behind, calling for help, for God, for anyone. The sound is vast, yet terribly human. The voice of an entire ship dying all at once. You cover your ears, but it seeps through your gloves, your skin, your very bones. Maggie grips your arm, her face pale under the starlight. "Don't look," she whispers. But you do. Everyone does. The Titanic, that floating city of light and laughter, is gone, her last trace a handful of glowing embers beneath the water, sparks dying out as the cold claims them. The spot where she stood is empty now, a blank horizon of black and silver. The screams continue, distant but sharp. The officer shouts for the men to row back, to save whoever can be saved, but the sailors shake their heads in silence. "We'll be swamped," one mutters. "We can't risk it." The argument rises and falls like the tide, duty against fear, courage against survival. You can't tell who wins. You only know that the boat doesn't turn. You close your eyes, trying to shut out the sounds, but they cling to you, the voices, the cold, the memory of light vanishing into dark. When you open them again, the sea has turned to mirrors, reflecting the indifferent stars. The screams begin to fade, one by one, until there is only wind. The ocean is calm again, perfectly calm, as though none of it ever happened. And then, just as you start to believe the worst is over, a faint light flickers far on the horizon. Not the stars this time. Something else. Steady, deliberate. Maggie sees it too. "Do you see that?" She breathes. You nod, unable to speak. It flashes again, faint but unmistakable, a pulse of life in the dark. A ship. Hope, fragile as glass, begins to rise. The first time the light appears, no one trusts it. It pulses low on the horizon, steadier than a star, softer than a flare, and the boat falls quiet, as if the sea itself has asked for silence. Oars rest on gunwales. Breath condenses and vanishes. The cold gnaws bone and then retreats, the way a tide thinks twice. You count the flashing, as though numbers could make it truer. 1, 2, 3. There is a pattern, there is intent. "Hold water," the officer says, voice hoarse, authority thinned by the hours. You drift, tiny among other tiny shapes. The ocean is littered with pale rafts of ice that look like overturned china in the starlight. Someone near the bow starts to pray without words. just the cadence of pleading sent out across the black. Maggie touches your sleeve. Her fingers are blocks of ice through the glove. "It's a ship," she whispers, not daring a second sentence. "Hope this fragile must be handled like crystal. Even the wrong breath could crack it." A minute later, another signal answers up above and far off. A green rocket opens like a strange flower and showers the dark with falling embers. It hisses as it dies. The officer inhales sharply through his teeth. "That's for us," he says, and the men, some of them hardly more than boys, bend to their oars with a will that finds its source somewhere beyond muscle. The boat leans into motion. Wood complains in the rowlocks, frost cracks underfoot. You begin to move toward the light. You row too. It's ungainly in the jacket, comic under other circumstances, but every pull warms a fraction of blood back to obedience. Maggie finds a rhythm and you match it, the two of you rowing in little bursts between the men's longer strokes. When your hands slip, the officer passes you a scrap of sailcloth like the gift of a kingdom. Breath by breath, the light grows. Between strokes you listen, because the night has been teaching you how. All around, other boats mark their place. A cough, a child's small whimper, the soft thunder of oars hitting water in a dozen different tempos. Somewhere, off your starboard shoulder, a man calls a name into the dark 3 times and receives only the sea's answer. Each time the name is different. Each time the same. The horizon begins to unclench. At first, it's only the black losing its certainty. Then a pure line emerges, where sky decides to be sky and not water. Dawn approaches without apology. To the north, icebergs stand like cathedrals, bluish, rimmed with rose at their far edges, enormous and indecently beautiful. Their presence explains the air's cruelty and makes it worse. In their shadow, you feel smaller than small. The rescuing ship materializes the way a city does out of fog first. A hint of bulk, then masts, then the dark curve of her hull carrying lights stacked like beacons. Carpathia becomes a word in the mouth of the boat, relief, disbelief, a promise turned into iron. You can hear orders on her deck, sharp and quick. A whistle sounds short, purposeful. A ladder unfurls down her side like a rope of salvation. A cargo net follows, creaking as it kisses the water. "Easy now," your officer calls. "Bow in. Mind the swell." The men feather their blades. Your boat noses toward the great black wall of the Carpathia's flank. She smells of steam, hot metal, coffee that last is a delirium of scent that makes your knees weak. Hands reach down huge, determined, alive. "Ladies first." A voice booms, and the phrase this time is not etiquette, but engineering. The moment of rising from boat to ship is a small berth. You grasp the rope, plant a foot in the net, climb awkwardly as your life jacket shoves the world away. A sailor above leans out, catches your forearm in a grip that hurts and saves. You stumble onto the deck and the earth no. The ship tilts kindly to meet you. Someone throws a blanket over your shoulders with professional tenderness. Another presses a tin mug into your hands. The first sip scalds your mouth, and you weep because it is hot. Make room, move along, miss warmth inside. This way. The corridor you enter is busy and hushed at once. Stewards carry stacks of blankets like loaves. A nurse tucks a shawl around an old woman with a motion so gentle it erases a lifetime. People, your people, strangers, and not sit where they can, eyes enormous in salt-rimed faces. In the women's saloon, lamps glow with a moral light. They have made a world out of steam and kindness. Maggie arrives behind you moments later, hair a frozen halo, shawl stiff with night. She's already working hands on shoulders, words that stitch the air together. "You're safe. Sit here. Drink this." Her voice occupies the space that panic would like. And panic, rebuked, withdraws. You look for Emily and do not find her. You look again, slow this time, name in your mouth like a candle cupped against wind, and still you do not find her. A purser with a ledger begins the work of names. "State your family name, miss," he says, pencil poised but eyes kind. People answer the only question anyone can answer, who they are. The list grows. A clerk repeats each entry aloud to a second man. They are building a raft of ink on which the living can stand. You give your name. The pencil scratches. The sound is absurdly loud. They bring baskets of clothes, men's sweaters, children's coats, anything warm that can be spared. The Carpathia's passengers appear with armfuls of their own belongings, barefoot, hair unmade, faces soft, with the astonishment of charity. A little girl is wrapped twice. Someone laughs because once would do, and they are hungry to laugh at a world still permitting surplus. A woman from your boat refuses the last dry shawl until the clerk insists what's left on the racks has no memory and will not be offended. Above deck, more boats arrive, black beetles on a leaden sea. Ladders rattle, names multiply. In the distance, others are dots that never move, and dots that never move become facts when the sun comes up enough to make grief exact. A sailor closes his eyes for 2 seconds, then opens them and goes on tying knots because the day has requirements. A rumor passes in a lower voice. We turn for New York once we've done all we can. Wireless says the Californian is near but late. Ice all around. Keep below until we clear the field. The ship shivers, changes note. You feel the Carpathia choose a direction with her whole body. They call roll by boats. Number 6, here. Number 12, we're here. 17. Someone's voice breaks on the number, and a nurse takes the paper and continues, not missing a pace. You listen hard for the one you came down in, for the one you thought Emily might have found, for any scrap of proof that the ocean returned what it borrowed. A man in a damp officer's coat stands in the doorway for a minute, hat in his hands, counting souls the way a clerk counts coin. When he leaves, you know the arithmetic hurt him. The light strengthens, until the sea goes from iron to pewter to a terrible honest blue. Broken chairs float by. A trunk. A child's shoe that cannot possibly be a child's shoe, because no universe permits such a thing to drift in daylight. Women look away, and then back again, because looking is how the mind tells the truth it doesn't want. A steward lays a towel over a porthole until the ship is past the worst of what the sun reveals. Somewhere forward, they begin to read a list aloud, the names of those already aboard. After each name, a pause. A voice from the crowd answers, here, or no voice answers at all. Each absence is a room no one enters. Each here is a match struck in a long tunnel. Your mouth is suddenly dry. Maggie grips your hand so hard your bones petition for mercy. The purser steps onto a chair so the syllables carry. Brown, Margaret. A clear, here, rings out, and Maggie exhales as if she's been underwater since midnight. Bishop, here. Carter, here. The litany proceeds, steady as a metronome. It reaches your letter, and the purser frowns, turns a page, pencils a note, looks up. Emily, he begins, searching the crowd for the rest of a name he doesn't yet have. Your heart lurches so hard the floor moves with it. You open your mouth to give him what he needs. And from the deck above, a lookout's voice cuts down the stairwell, bright with shock. Ice, dead ahead close. The ship heaves no violence. Only decision coffee trembles in cups, and the lamp glass sings. The list stops mid-syllable. Every head turns as one toward the sunlight and what it shows. The cry from the deck freezes every movement in the saloon. Ice dead ahead, close. The words tumble down the stairwell, echoing off brass and wood, sounding almost absurd after the night you've endured. For a moment, no one even reacts. You all stare upward, caught between disbelief and dread. It's impossible another iceberg, after all that has already happened. Surely the ocean cannot be so cruel as to haunt you twice. The purser snaps out of it first. Stay where you are, he calls, steady but strained. They'll alter course, no cause for alarm. His voice carries the weary authority of a man who knows fear too well to let it grow unchecked. But still, you feel the tremor in his tone. Maggie squeezes your hand. Not again, she whispers. Not again. The Carpathia shudders faintly as her engines shift, turning ever so slightly to port. The vibration hums through the floorboards, steady and reassuring this time. Above, Boots strike the deck, officers shouting short, efficient orders. You imagine them scanning the horizon for the white shape that ended another ship's story only hours ago. Then, just as suddenly, the tension dissolves. A voice from above, clear, confident, calls, "All clear, it's passing astern." Relief ripples through the room like heat after frost. The ship rights her course, the vibration smoothing back into rhythm. Someone laughs shakily. The purser exhales. Maggie leans forward, head in her hands, and you see her shoulders tremble not from cold now, but from the weight of too much relief. Outside, the Carpathia glides past a jagged wall of ice, drifting silent and perfect beneath the rising sun. Its edges catch the light and blaze blue and gold, crystalline and terrible. The sailors on deck look down at it in wary reverence. A few murmur quiet oaths. It's larger than any building you've ever seen, floating like an altar on the calm morning sea. The captain orders coffee for the crew on duty. No one speaks of the iceberg again. As the morning brightens, warmth begins to seep back into the world. The survivors gather on deck, wrapped in borrowed blankets and old coats, huddled around improvised stoves. The air smells of coal smoke and salt, and something faintly metallic like rusted iron washed clean. For the first time, you see the horizon in full daylight. It's endless and bright, dotted with fragments of ice that glitter like a broken chandelier. Maggie stands beside you, silent, her eyes red but alert. Around you, the others are coming back to life, some murmuring prayers, others simply staring into the distance. A few are asking questions now, the kind of questions people only dare when the worst seems finally over. Did they find more boats? Was anyone else picked up? How many? No one finishes their sentences. The answers drift in fragments, passed from steward to sailor to passenger. 705, they think. The rest, a pause, always a pause. The numbers hang in the air like frost, cold and fragile. You clutch your borrowed shawl tighter, the wool scratchy but comforting. Your thoughts keep circling back to Emily. Her name still echoes from the roll call that never finished. You scan every face that passes on deck, hoping for some impossible reunion, but she isn't there. A bitter wind rises, and you turn away, swallowing hard. Down below, the Carpathia's crew is still working. They move with the quiet purpose of men who know they are witnesses to history. Sailors haul the last of the empty lifeboats aboard wooden shells rimed with ice, their ropes stiff as wire. Some are half flooded, others carry the remnants of what's been lost. A child's hat, a single shoe, a deck chair splintered from impact. Each object is placed carefully on deck, catalogued by number, as though the sea itself might later come asking for them back. The ship's doctor moves among the survivors, checking bandages, pressing hands, offering words that mean more than medicine. You overhear him telling a young woman, "You're safe now. You did everything right." She nods, but her eyes stare past him, unfocused. Safe feels like too small a word. By mid-morning, the Carpathia begins to fill with a different sound, a low murmur of disbelief and grief that seems to come from the walls themselves. People are sharing stories now, piecing together fragments of the night, where they were, what they saw, who they lost. You hear snatches of it as you walk the deck. "I saw them waving from the upper rail, then the lights went out. The band kept playing, all the way until the water was like knives. You couldn't breathe. Each voice trails off at the same place. There are no words for what followed. Maggie finds you again near the rail. Her cheeks are raw from wind, her voice hoarse. "They say we'll reach New York in 3 days, she says quietly. 3 days. Feels like a lifetime from here. 3 days, you repeat, the number tasting strange on your tongue. 3 days to return to a world that can never understand this one. 3 days to learn how to walk on land again after the sea has taken so much." The officer who led your lifeboat approaches, hat in hand. His face is grey, with exhaustion. "Ladies," he says gently, "there'll be a service on deck at noon, for those we couldn't bring home." You nod, unable to speak. When the time comes, the entire ship gathers survivors, sailors, passengers from the Carpathia, all standing shoulder to shoulder beneath a sky too bright for morning. The captain reads from a small leather-bound book, his voice steady though it trembles at the edges. We commit their souls to the deep, trusting that the same hand that raised them from life will raise them from the sea. A silence follows that feels deeper than any prayer. The sea glitters coldly below, indifferent, eternal. You drop a single flower over the rail, one of many given out by the Carpathia's passengers, and watch it fall until it's lost among the scattered white shapes of ice. After the service, the ship settles into a strange quiet. People move softly now, as though afraid to disturb the dead. You sit again by the rail, the shawl pulled close, staring toward the west, where the sky begins to glow faintly gold. The sun is climbing higher, warm against your face, but it doesn't reach the cold that lives deeper inside you. Maggie stands beside you, her voice soft. When we reach land, they'll ask us what it was like. What happened out there? What will you tell them? You ask. She looks out at the sea for a long time before answering. That we saw the finest thing man ever built, and the ocean reminded us how small we still are. Her words settle between you like an anchor. You nod, unable to find your own. Hours later, you return to your cabin, a borrowed space that smells of coal, coffee, and salt. You sit by the small porthole, watching the ocean pass. The light dances over the water, bright and fleeting, and for a moment, you can almost imagine the outline of a great ship beneath the surface, its decks still glowing faintly in the deep. The illusion fades with the waves, leaving only the endless blue. The Carpathia sails on. Each hour carries you further from that frozen night, yet you know part of you will remain there forever. Adrift in the starlight, waiting for a sound that will never come. As evening approaches, a new signal flashes from the wireless room landfall by dawn. The passengers whisper the words to one another, passing them down like a shared breath of relief. New York. The world waiting to listen. You close your eyes, hearing again the music that played until the end, faint and faithful even as the sea rose to meet it. The melody lingers in your mind, endless as the tide. And somewhere far below, in the quiet heart of the Atlantic, the ocean keeps its secrets. Then, faintly almost beyond hearing, you think you catch another sound through the metal hull. Not the groan of machinery, not the wind, but something older, softer, a single, low note of music carried by the deep. You hold your breath, listening, and in the silence that follows, it feels just, for a heartbeat, as though the Titanic herself is still singing. And that's where we'll leave tonight's voyage, friends adrift beneath the cold stars, listening to the last echoes of a world that believed it could never sink. If you've made it this far, thank you for sailing through history with me. Take a deep breath, unclench your hands, and let the quiet settle in. If you enjoyed this calm journey, tap that like button. It tells the algorithm you want more nights like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Candlelit History so you don't miss next week's story. We post every Friday night. Long, gentle histories made for sleep, reflection, and that feeling of being somewhere else for a while. You can also leave a comment below. Tell me where you're listening from tonight, what time it is there, and whether you'd have been brave enough to step into that lifeboat first. I read everyone. Until next time, keep your lights low, your tea warm, and your curiosity burning. Good night from Candlelit History, where the past still whispers softly, long after the candles go out.